Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good afternoon. Get comfortable. We'll wait for a few people to join here and we will get started. Welcome, welcome. Where is everyone from? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you'd like to. We love to see that. Awesome. Hi, Julie from Indiana, Beth from Pittsburgh. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to get started here, everyone. Good afternoon from sunny Washington, D.C. and welcome to the ins and outs of Society Board Service. I am Erin Krieger with SMPS, and I will be your technical moderator for today. Please put all questions in the Q&A box, or you can simply put them in the chat. That's fine as well. We'll make sure to address those. If you have any technical issues, please chat me directly. At this time, I will hand it over to our fearless leader for today, Tina Myers with SMPS. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Erin. Welcome everybody. We're so excited to have as many people interested in the session and hopefully serving as a leader of the society. So just a few things before we get started, and here's what you can expect for the presentation. We're going to go through a variety of frequently asked questions throughout the year that we have about board leadership overall, and hopefully they're the kind of questions that you specifically have. But as Erin said, you might have others, so please put those in the Q&A box and we'll address those after we go through the variety of questions that we have on hand. After we go through those questions, then we'll talk about the process and the application itself. So that said, let me get started and introduce our primary speakers here. So Melissa Lutz, FSMPS CPSM, our SMPS past president, and Doug Parker, FSMPS CPSM, our current SMPS president. They will be fielding most of the questions for us during our session, but also a part of our program here today to help facilitate and answer some of the questions is our Chief Executive Officer, Michael Gary, and our Chief Financial Officer, Antonio Payne. So I think with this group, you're going to get some really great answers and feedback, hopefully, to all the questions that you have. So that said, before we get started and dive into the questions, Doug, I'm going to hand it over to you just for a quick few words.
Thanks so much, Tina. So just want to take a moment on behalf of Melissa and myself and the group here from HQ, just to thank you for taking time to spend a few minutes and learn more about what it's like to join our headquarters board of directors or the Society Foundation. You know, Melissa and I both have a real passion for our roles on the board, and I hope that comes through today for you. And I hope that we encourage you in some way to obviously you're taking this seriously or you wouldn't be here, but we really hope that we can inspire you in some way, answer questions, give you information that you need to know to successfully throw your hat in the ring to join our board of directors or our foundation trustees. It's a really rewarding process. I know you'll hear Melissa and I both talk a little bit about our personal experiences, but this is one of the greatest things I've done in my career. And I just really encourage you and thank you for taking this seriously and for considering the society at this level. Tina?
Great, thank you so much, Doug. All right, well, we're gonna get started with the questions. And so for the first one, I'm gonna hand this over to you, Doug. So someone is very excited to submit for the position on the board or any position, and they're just not sure that they're really qualified. How do they know that they're the right person and should be applying?
You know, I really love this question. So we have a bunch of technical qualifications that you can read about, and you need to read them and make sure you're technically qualified, because part of your submission and application process, you're going to be rated or scored based on those qualifications. And if you're not qualified, that helps us know just on paper that you're not really ready yet. That said, if you have passion for SMPS, and this is an opportunity that you see to give back at one of the highest levels and greatest ways, absolutely consider this. I think it is a personal decision if you're right or the right person. And it's, for me, it was based on contribution and giving back to the organization. And so if I would answer this question by saying, if that's really what's fueling you, by all means, please please proceed.
Perfect.
And if I might add something, I would just say, if it's something that you're interested in, you believe that you're interested in a position, please feel free to call the person who's in that position that you want to serve in, so that you can find out from them firsthand what their experience is like and what they feel the qualifications are for that position. I mean, you are not precluded from reaching out to whoever you wish to.
Melissa, thank you. Well, and the next question actually is a great add-on to that. So, there are individuals out there who think that they can bring and want to bring their talents to the board, into the headquarters. They really want to dive in. They want to help membership grow. They want to work on build business. They really just want to, get busy. So how will you put me to work, or put them to work in that instance? Or will you be doing that? And so this one is for Doug. We'll let you get started, Doug.
Okay. Gosh. So you can bring your talents to the board in your headquarters. In fact, that's what we're looking for. It's our board today has evolved over the years. And I give Michael Gary a lot of credit in his time as our CEO. That he has really elevated the role of our board to be very strategic. And so I think that this is not a traditional working board. I think it's a place where you can come and be strategic and contribute at that level. We are challenged. I hope I'm answering this question the right way, Tina, but we are really challenged right now with so many big picture obstacles. And what we need on our board is people that are ready to come to the table to help discuss them and confront them. And they range and they're varied, and there's not one specific area of expertise that we need. We need a very rounded perspective. We are helping guide the organization and provide feedback at a high level on all of the areas that we deal with at our chapters too. It really filters up. So we need all the talent you have. The more specialized, the better, because you can contribute. But just remember too that this is it's about affecting the strategy of the organization and really impacting at that level, rather than getting in the weeds, and like you would in a chapter, rather than getting in the weeds and going to work. It's just a little bit of a different environment.
Well, I think that was perfect, in terms of really what we need to expect from members of our board. I think the one thing that we'd like to remind everyone of is so many members of our board, of course, come through our chapter leadership. I mean, this is their experience, and this is part of even a qualifier. And sometimes what's hard is for you to kind of let go of the very logistical, operational management of a chapter, bring it to an SMPS headquarters board, and realize that you don't have to do the work. So this is the distinction. You have a headquarters staff who are professional association executives and managers in their own fields. And we work to make sure that the vision and the mission of the society is achieved through the vision of the board. So that's where your words on, vision and strategies and really looking about where we can be, you're really directing staff to do the work to make those things happen. So that's really very different. It can be hard sometimes, but we need your voice. We need your ideas. And so I just want to add a little bit more to that. So Melissa or Mike, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Nope, good answers.
Okay, well then let's go into the next question. So are future board members already determined? I mean, do I really have a chance to be viewed equally among other candidates? We have heard this over the years, and this is a great opportunity for us to talk about it. So Melissa, I'm going to hand this one over to you.
Sure. So the answer to that, the simple answer is no, by all means, no. There are so many qualified people that we have in our SMPS membership. You can choose to be extremely strategic at knowing what your goal is going to be in your whole SMPS career, as Doug and I have been. We started out being chapter leaders and grew to leading certain committees, from a regional perspective, then national perspective, served on the board previously in what's now an at-large position, and Doug was secretary treasurer. And then we took a break and I served on the foundation. And then, knowing that my goal someday was to be the president of the society, it didn't mean that, I was slated in some kind of org chart somewhere that maybe someday I'd be that and that people already knew it. I worked really hard to get there. I knew I got involved with a lot of different things in the societies to prepare myself. So what I would say is everybody has a chance to be viewed equally. We'll get into this a little bit later, but there's a nominations and elections committee who are individuals from all over the country who will be looking at these nominations and having really thorough discussions about each candidate and making the selection based on what your experience is, based on what the society needs at the time, for those people who can be there to help us live our vision and live our mission and the strategic goals that we have set forth. So, to wrap it all up, absolutely not. There's not a secret list of people who are already picked for these positions. They're open.
That's perfect. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Doug or Michael? Okay, well, Melissa, thank you for that. Well, then let's go on to the next question. So an individual is applying for president-elect, but they haven't served on the board previously, and they want to know how they can be a good president if they don't have that history on the board itself. So I have Doug for you to respond to this, but Melissa, I would love to hear your feedback as well.
So I think a lot of what Melissa said applies to this question, quite frankly. It is certainly in our experience, I'm speaking for Melissa and myself, because we've been on a very similar journey with SMPS and our SMPS peers have mirrored. We've positioned for time on the board through service, through getting very familiar with the organization at a HQ level, at a society level. And I think it really prepared us well. Bernice Bako, who is our president-elect currently, who couldn't be here today, she had a family emergency come up. She was not on the board prior to serving in the president-elect role. So we've got real life examples today of both scenarios. And I think if you don't have the experience of having served on the board before or having served as a committee chair or something at a national level, it is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. Is it attainable? Absolutely. Everyone brings their own experience and their own perspectives, which is amazing and wonderful and what we need. I do think what's most important, and I would advise you to consider in your application, if you're interested in that role, how will you continue the current initiatives that are underway? I think one of the biggest things that we have seen over the last, 8 or 10 years is continuity from board to board. It's been very important that we have big strategic objectives that are set, and they're not one-offs. They're 3 and 5 and 8 and 10-year initiatives. And so when we do have that continuity of leadership, people that have served on the board before, it certainly is easier for us to maintain that vision. It's certainly easier for the HQ staff to stay on the same path or trajectory. And just consider that as you think about how you would contribute, that this isn't a position where you come in and blow things up and change things and do it all over. There's a lot already set in motion. And so if you can fall in, if you can filter in behind that and put your own stamp on it and support that, I think it's terrific.
Absolutely. Melissa, do you have anything more that you'd like to add?
I would just add that, all of that and then some, the extra part that I would make sure is if you are going to run for a position such as president-elect, because it is a 3-year term and it's a very high position in the society, I would make sure you are engaged with the society. You have to know what we're doing. You need to pay attention to all the things that we're doing. You probably will have attended conferences and engaged with members and staff and other leaders in SMPS, so that you're part of that kind of people out there moving and shaking who are involved and have been involved and kind of know what the society's doing. Maybe you're watching us on social media, you're getting our marketer quick look, you know everything that we're doing because you want to be able to carry that message forth, and you want to be, the biggest cheerleader leading the way for all of our members. So I would just make sure that you're engaged, that you know what we're doing, you know what we're trying to get done, the initiatives are. So I would just say, and the other way to be a good president is just think big, think about the entire membership is North America. And that's a lot of people and a lot of members. So you are serving every single one of those members. And it's very important that you are serving the bigger, greater good, not just a chapter or a state or a regional area, but it's everyone.
Well, thank you for that. So let's get into another element of serving on the board. And it's a little bit more tactical. So what about travel? I mean, should I expect to travel a lot, especially now? I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that are up in the air and we don't have answers to. But what do you think they should expect if they become a member of the board, whether they're going to be the president-elect, the secretary-treasurer, or a director at large? Yeah, I mean, are there differences for travel for each of those positions? So this one might be a little bit harder to answer, but from what you know, what your experience has, why don't we talk about that a little bit? So Doug, I have you on this as well, but I would love to hear from Melissa too. And certainly, Mike, you might have some things that you would like to add to this. So.
Melissa,
Does the no travel president want to be the one who talks?
I'm happy to kick us off. So I haven't traveled this year, really. Obviously, none of us have. But when I submitted for president-elect, that wasn't the scenario. And so the way I look at this is we all have day jobs, and that's most important. And SMPS as an organization, and certainly the HQ staff as people who care about our members, and we're members, right? They all understand that. And so we have had presidents in the past who traveled quite a bit. Their companies supported that. We have had presidents in the past who didn't travel a lot because they were busy or didn't have quite the flexibility. I personally believe that this is the decision that you can make. There are some things that we have to do. We have quarterly board meetings, we have a conference, Build Business. There are some things that you're expected to attend, and it's very clear from day one what those expectations are. There are a lot of things that you can choose to participate in. My personal belief is also that we have an opportunity to draw from our other board members and from our foundation to supplement. So we have a really large group of leadership team on a national level that we can draw from. And that's exactly what I planned to do before COVID happened. If there was a conflict or if I couldn't travel, we have trustees, we have other board members, and I would absolutely call on them and give them the opportunity to represent the organization if I couldn't.
Melissa or Mike?
Yeah, I'll add to that, Doug. I think Doug got that right. And of course, we don't know in the future at this point in the short term or long term, but we budget to allow and provide for volunteer engagement with members in a variety of ways, whether it's visiting chapters or conferences. And also we partner with a lot of other industry organizations. And so occasionally the president or a director may be invited to speak at a conference on behalf of SMPS, and it varies every year. But one thing we want to, I think, really reiterate, because we get this question a lot, the job of the board of directors is not to travel and go out and visit all the chapters. First of all, it's logistically impossible to visit 58 groups, plus all the conferences, plus all the board. So I wouldn't think of it that way as a obligation. I would think of there's a minimum few things that we want to do, and we're better suited in person. We hope we'll get back to having in-person board meetings very soon. And that's really kind of the minimum. Other than that, it's kind of, it varies every year. And as Doug says, just to reiterate, it comes down to a lot of your personal availability to do so. But there's no expectation or obligation that if you live, I'm just going to make it up, in Atlanta, you should go out and visit all the chapters in the southeastern states. Now, some people may like doing that, but there's no expectation or obligation for that. And candidly, we don't budget for that either. More we spend our resources in other areas, not on airplane tickets and Marriott hotels as much as we can.
So before we go any further then, Erin, do we have any questions from the chat box or Q&A?
We're good to go forward for a little bit more.
Okay, well then we'll go forward.
Yeah.
So then on to kind of the similar topic. Well, actually, that's not in the one I was thinking about, but let's go for this one. So if I apply for secretary treasurer, do I need financial experience? So I think I'm going to hand this one over to Melissa. And Antonio, we would love for you to participate in the response in this one as well. So Melissa.
Absolutely. So I would say you need to know how to read a spreadsheet and understand what that is and understand what the checks and balances and profit and loss statement are. But you having Antonio, who's a CFO of SNPS, who's there to work alongside you and help you and guide you. So I would not expect someone to be, the treasurer of their firm's board of directors and come in here to hold this role. I mean, you certainly by all means can do that. And Antonio, you might want to say a little bit more, add a little bit more to that, because you've been working hand in hand with these individuals forever.
So I'm going to just slightly disagree with my esteemed past president, only because I've been spoiled in all my 8 years. So when I joined SNPS, Doug Parker was my treasurer, and following that, Chris Rickman, and now Barbie Style. So I have had people who have financial acumen all the years that I've been a part of SNPS, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So please, please, if you're applying for the secretary treasurer, it would behoove you to have some business/finance acumen.
So Antonio, do you want to talk just a little bit more about how you work with the secretary treasurer?
Sure. So we used to meet monthly, and we still provide financial statements on a monthly basis, but now we meet quarterly to do a deep dive into the financials. And so it is on a quarterly basis that I will have a call with our current treasurer, Barbie Styles, to review the financials. And it's at that time, she already has questions prepared when I send them to her because she knows what to look for. So that kind of helps inform the conversation. I'm happy to help explain to a more novice person. So obviously they don't have to have the expertise that my 3 predecessors had,
Right.
but it certainly does help.
Well, I will add one more thing then, and it's not a specific part of this question, but often, and again, because of the role that leaders have had on their own board, you might think, well, the secretary treasurer, as a secretary part of that, do I need to take the minutes? Do I need to, take all the notes? Do I need to do all these other things that maybe you would have done on a chapter board? So the answer to that is no. However, you will see that even in the bylaws, or there's a statement about the position description that you are responsible for the minutes or something similar to that. What that really means is that we need the secretary treasurer to sign off on those minutes. You need to be kind of own it that way. You'll work with Antonio, you'll work with Michael as the CEO, and actually he puts together most of these minutes unless, one of us need to help him in any way. But you do not need to take the minutes. We need you to be actively engaged in the conversation. And sometimes the administrative role doesn't really lend itself well for you to be actively engaged, just as I said. So just another question sometimes that we get when it comes to the secretary treasurer. And so we will work closely with you on all of those different responsibilities, but you don't need to worry about that. And the next question.
If I could just give a quick thing, I think another way to look at this is, in fact, the secretary treasurer is probably the most prescriptive job in the bylaws. The others are more sort of open-ended, but meaning you are the officer responsible for record keeping and the financials, but you actually don't do the actual bookkeeping or writing of the minutes. Your job is to make sure it gets done. It's presented to the board. It's meaningful, not meaningful, but it's legible and understood and those sorts of things. You're like the spirit leader of the money, but you actually have staff and others that will support you in those operations.
Thank you. So
yeah,
on to the next question then. What about expenses? So will I need to pay out of my own pocket or my firm's? How does that work? So again, actually, Antonio, I know that Doug, you can chime in on this as well, but Antonio, you might be the best person to really respond to this one.
So we do have a travel budget for our directors, and Generally, any expense that is incurred on behalf of the society is reimbursable. So you may have to come out of your pocket to pay for certain things, but you will be reimbursed usually within a 14-day turnaround period. We do have an expense reporting system that we ask you guys to follow. Keep receipts. We do it all electronically now, so you don't have to physically mail me paper anymore. But there may be a time where you have to come out of pocket, but you will be reimbursed.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. In your role as a board member, when you're acting on behalf of the society in an authorized role, position, manner, event, you're 100% reimbursed.
Yes.
So there is no out of pocket for that. There's a reimbursement process, which
Yes.
Antonio just described. So if the society asks me as president to attend something, represent the organization, speak to a chapter, whatever that may be, that's 100% covered and it's budgeted for. So that is included in our annual budget. There are things that I may choose to attend. Pinnacle, the Pinnacle experience is an example of one that isn't a board sanctioned event. The board doesn't need to be there. They're not representing the organization. So that's something that I would pay for out of pocket as a member. And so there is a little bit of a differentiation, but generally the activities that we participate in, we're asked to by the society and therefore reimbursed.
Well, and just, to that point, that would, some of those things might be considered like private benefit or private inurement. And actually there's a section in our bylaws that covers that. So that is where it's not so much different than how you should be managing those expenses for chapter board travel as well. So I don't think that you'll find that much different overall. So what about other financial commitments? Is there anything else that they need to be thoughtful of, aware of? I'm not sure, since we've covered a lot just in the last question. Is there anything else that stands out? So Antonio, Doug, Mike?
The one thing I would add that's probably not written policy, but we do expect our trustees to support the SMPS Foundation. Any amount that they could afford to give, we accept. There's not a dollar amount requirement, but we do expect that you would support the foundation.
Yeah, and as a member on the board or as a trustee, I still pay my dues out of pocket personally. I still pay for my certification for my CPSM every 3 years. If I choose to submit for anything, for MCA or anything else that's a personal thing, then obviously that's monies that I pay for myself or my firm pays.
That's perfect. Well, next question. Let's talk about speaking commitments. So what about those speaking commitments? Are they really, if I'm not much of a presenter, what should I expect? How do we handle that? And what do we need from our board members on that behalf? So Doug, you want to speak to that, please?
So I am not a presenter. It's my least favorite thing to do in the whole world. And, the short of this is, even in the world of COVID, where I've had multiple opportunities, I use the term opportunity loosely, but I've had multiple opportunities to speak. And what I'll say is, similar to our ability to call on our resources, we can still do that. There will be times, there have been times, there will be times for you when you may have an opportunity that you just aren't comfortable with or isn't the right fit for you, or for whatever reason, you want to ask one of your leader peers to step in, and that's perfectly fine to do. In the role of president, there are some things that you're expected to do. And headquarters has done an amazing job of giving me enough training to be comfortable enough to do events like today. And so I think that it's an opportunity for growth for us. If you're not a speaker, not somebody who likes to necessarily be in front of the camera, but you also have a really wonderful resource pool that you can lean on. Melissa does that for me all the time, and so do the other board members and trustees. And so there is a base level expectation. There's also an expectation you can have for training, but there is a lot of flexibility. Well, Melissa, what's your perspective?
I would just say, I like partnering with people to give presentations, and Doug and I have done that a few times. Being a part of a panel, or, you know, if you're a fellow, getting involved with some of the fellows forums is a great way to kind of get your feet wet, because or being part of a panel. So I think, I mean, and I'm comfortable with speaking. It terrifies me, but I've gotten better because I've forced myself to do it. Like Doug said, everybody at SMPS has been amazing. They give you scripts. They tell you exactly what the expectations are. And if there's something you want to punt to someone else, there are plenty of people there ready to grab it, the baton.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that you can count on is that when new board members come in, we have our component relations team who will reach out to everyone and ask, well, what are the things that you are comfortable with and you feel that you're maybe well versed in or expert in? And, you know, we want to make sure that you're successful as a speaker if you are requested. So we want to tap into the talents that you inherently have. So you will be asked those things. You know, we'll ask for a bio and other things that we can use for promotional purposes, but we would never put or ask anyone to do something that they feel like they just can't speak to well. And then if there's something just about the society overall where you need to be versed in, that is clearly where the team will be able to give you all the support that you need. And like Doug said, some training. If this is just not something that you've done, we've got your back. We're going to help you through this. Okay, next question. So even though I'm very interested, I'm concerned about the time commitment. So what should I realistically expect? So Melissa, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, I'm more than happy to do that. And then others might want to
Sure.
chime in, but I will say, I think the time commitment is, I mean, what the realistic is what you really want to put into it. All of us have jobs, and expectations come along with having another leadership responsibility, as well as those of you who have family commitments, and those take priority over SMPS, or, you know, it's really up to you, but they should. I think the time commitment is we know that you are responsible for showing up at those in-person board meetings or the board meetings that we have scheduled quarterly. Right now, our board is trying to talk once a month to at least just kind of discuss kind of the current events, bond a little, because we aren't doing that in person at the board meetings. But it's really, sometimes you're involved with other initiatives or committees. You know, you chair certain committees when you're a past president or a president-elect, and you're involved with things like the CLS. And that takes a little bit more time, but it's very manageable. There's an entire group of very talented staff members who are there to help you. And if you say that you can't make something because something came up, they totally get it, and they can grab it and they can run with it, and it's amazing. So just know that, don't feel the pressure of having to commit, 20 hours a month towards this, because realistically, it's what you feel like you can do. For me as president last year, I put more time in probably than I did as a chapter delegate, just because I was the president. There are certain things I committed to do. A lot of chapters were having town halls with their members, and it was, after COVID. So I felt like we wanted to have headquarters represented and speak on behalf of headquarters. So that was a little bit over and above what was expected, but you'll know what's right. And if you feel like you're pushed or pulled in the wrong direction, don't be afraid to just say, hey, I'm feeling pulled. Can someone help me?
Perfect. Is there anyone else that would like to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add that, so Melissa and our terms have been, Melissa had half a term of pretty normal, and then COVID hit, and my term's been completely atypical. I would say abnormal, but I don't want the jokes from that. So I haven't had travel. My term has been 4 or 5, 6 hours a month commitment. It's just been different because I haven't been on planes. I haven't traveled to chapters. I have done a lot of Zooms. Mike and I meet regularly. Melissa and Bernice and I meet regularly to help with transition and things like that. So most of the time is very manageable. I would say 6 hours tops in a month, unless there's a board meeting right now. So for people out there that are analytical and need a number, 4 to 6 hours a month in our environment, in our world today, is about what's happening.
Well, thank you for that. It really has changed up a little bit this year.
Sure has.
So we'll see what next year brings us or what the following year brings us. So on to the next question.
Tina,
Oh, sure.
there was a question in our chat that I thought would be worth answering now.
sure.
I think it
Let's
was
go.
really more about the local chapter experience. But the question is essentially, can you play multiple roles on the board? Should you? So can you be a director and on a committee, on a task force, involved with your local chapter if you're on the HQ board? So Melissa or Doug, maybe speak to managing your time and your engagement out beyond the board of directors. I can answer that too, but I'll leave it to you since you're doing it.
I would say, I don't know what the regulations are, Tina or Mike, you can address
I can
that.
speak to it a little bit if you want.
Well, personally, I would advise against that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest reason, aside from sanity, is, I want to be an advisor and a resource in my role. And I want to provide opportunity for other members in those positions locally or regionally. And so I think it's important from that perspective to take a step back, be available as a resource, but don't be in a leadership position outside of my board obligations.
And
Yeah,
we-
there's a go ahead, Melissa. Oh, sorry. There was a follow-up question. Can you speak to relationship between board service at the society level and being involved at the chapter level? And I think, Doug, you just answered that, but to be clear, there isn't a prescriptive rules around these, but we advise that you not do that, that your responsibility would be to the society board during that tenure. But that doesn't mean you can't be involved. Go to lunches, go to events, you have friends locally. Absolutely, you should maintain your local relationship. We just wouldn't want you to be spread so far. And also that there wouldn't be any conflict of interest, because there'll be times during board meetings, we may be discussing policies regarding members or chapters. And when you're on the board, you're accountable to the SMPS organization first and foremost. So we say, yes, you can be involved, but really limit that engagement in any sort of formal way, I think is a fair answer.
Go ahead,
So
Melissa.
I just had one thing to add, and it's for me, throughout my entire term as president and past president, president-elect, I serve on our chapter's programs committee. It's kind of advisory or helping to get speakers, but I still am engaged at that level, just not chairing anything.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, like we said, all of us are spread thin with having a family and a job and friends and a life. And then we have SMPS that we build on top of that. It's making sure that you don't take on too much so you can be the best volunteer you can in the society board role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
You can even see that we have committee guidelines and task force guidelines and policies and procedures. And specifically within those guidelines, it states that we do not recommend, we don't use very harsh wording, but we really don't want even committee members to be serving on a board for the chapter either. And again, it's about making sure that your time is spent really where it is most needed. So that really does translate to a position on the board. And I think that, Mike, you made a great point. One of the things that you need to consider is, especially if you wanted to still serve on the chapter board and there's no wording that says you can't, and then serving, parallel with the SMPS headquarters board, there can be a conflict of interest there and where your loyalty really lies. So you are best serving your chapter as an advisory and then giving back, information. These are the things that we are focusing on, and keeping that chapter and other local chapters nearby well informed of everything that we are working on. That's how you can serve your chapter as well.
Yeah, of course, we're all loyal to SMPS, right? Just about your fiduciary responsibility when you're serving on a board. And if you're serving on two boards, there may be a conflict of that fiduciary responsibility. It's not so much about loyalty, it's just about your legal obligations to an entity. And that's where the conflict would be. So just want to be clear, we're all loyal. There's no us versus them. It's really about your legal accountability when you're serving on a board and trying to avoid those conflicts.
So thank you for that. Well, now, will my firm get special recognition, sponsorships as a result of my position on the board? So I have Doug, you speaking to this, and then certainly, Mike, Antonio, Melissa, we'd love to hear your feedback on this as well. So Doug, your thoughts?
So the simple answer is no. Your firm will receive recognition because you're in the role. So by product of that, of course, there's exposure because I represent my company and you represent your company. So sure. But as far as any special treatment, any discounted sponsorships or free sponsorships, not at all. It is 100% above board. We really truly are here as members representing the organization who happen to have jobs, who happen to work for companies. And as a result of that, by nature, certainly there's some visibility, but there is no in exchange for or monetary compensation of any kind that happens in form of like an advertisement or anything like that at all.
Yep. Well said. I don't know if we have anything more that we want to add to that. Nope. Okay, well, let's go on to the next question. Do I get free registrations now for all SMPS events? Doug, you already kind of talked about this a little bit in one of the other questions, but I think it's a good time to remind our potential board members exactly how this works. So do you want to start us off, and then we can certainly support whatever you have to share?
Sure. As I said earlier, when we're serving on behalf of the society, as in our board position, there are things that we get pre-registrations for. Build Business is the best example. It's comp because we have work to do. We are there representing the organization, and we're working as a board. There are times when we'll go to a regional conference as a board, maybe have a quarterly board meeting there, and the regional conference asks us to come and serve in a board capacity and lead sessions or be part of roundtables or a panel discussion, and those registrations are comped. Generally, as far as off the top of the head, that's kind of it. I mean, everything else truly is we're a regular member, and if we want to participate and do things, we participate and do things, and that we pay for those.
Yeah.
If I want to go to the SMPS bookstore, I go to the SMPS bookstore and buy my sweatshirt, I pay for that.
Right. And so that goes back into the conversation that we had about, well, these things could be perceived as, if it's not work of the board and something that we really need you to do as a member of the board, that can be construed as private benefit or private inurement. And that is absolutely inappropriate and is thoroughly outlined in our bylaws, as is our chapter bylaws as well. So we've talked about this in chapter programming and certainly during CLS and previous PLSs, but it is important to understand exactly what that role is. And so a part of it too is a commitment to supporting SMPS in other manners as well in doing what we want our members to do and making sure that they want to emulate that type of engagement from our board members. So Mike, is there anything more that you would like to add to that?
All those answers are correct, and I add a little flavor
Correct.
to it, and that is that we've been fortunate that our volunteers, in many ways, committees, board, are supportive of the organization to which they belong to, and so they still may ask their employer to cover some of the costs because their employer would have been covering the costs anyway. So it's we work it out, but the goal is, the point is that as you volunteer, there isn't it's not a prize to get, that's the wrong word I wanted to use, sorry. Essentially, we were to pay for all the registrations, you effectively would be paid to be a volunteer. And that's what we're trying to avoid. That's a culture that we don't support in SMPS, and nor do any other organizations really. But we do ask if you're no expectation, but if your employer said, well, we'll pay the airfare, that's fantastic, right? Because that means that member money can go to something else instead of an airline ticket, for example. But that's just a little flavor on it.
Okay.
But
Well,
no obligation on that. That's just an opportunity.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have one more question. And so this is perfect because I think we have something in our chat box on the foundation. So
right.
Clearly not everybody on this conference is interested just in serving on an SMPS board, but maybe interested in serving as a foundation trustee. So if they're interested in applying on the foundation, what's expected of them? And how is it different and distinct from being a member of the SMPS board? So Melissa, so you have experience working with the SMPS Foundation. Doug, you do as well. Antonio, you're our staff leader on that. And Michael, certainly you have relationships. So all of you might have a different perspective, and I would love for each of you to actually give a little bit of feedback on this one. So I'm going to start with you, Melissa. What are your thoughts?
Sure, absolutely. So I served as a foundation trustee and the president several years ago. It's a little bit different because, I mean, you're still a level or a leader at the highest level, but you are going to attend, we have monthly calls, and then we have a planning meeting that happens around the time of build business. This year it happened virtually, and I'm assuming it'll be happening virtually in 2021 as well. But it is, you have monthly calls, and how, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I got
That's
one of
okay.
those unstable messages that came across my screen. I apologize. But what the foundation does is there are certain things that we do, and that is we are focused on research, and we need to raise funds so that we can do the research that we need to do to accomplish our goals and promote the mission of SMPS and the vision. What we'll do is have those calls where everybody's kind of touching base once a month. And then there are work groups where if you're on the fundraising group, then you're helping to raise funds. And if you're on a research initiative, we have 3 or 4 of those this year, then you'll break into those. So that's where it's a little bit different. I know that Antonio and Michael have a lot more to say on this, so I just wanted to give kind of a higher level of involvement, but they will share more.
Well, thank you. Antonio.
So I think from a time management perspective, Doug gave you guys a 4 to 6 hours a month time commitment. I think for the foundation, it's closer to 2 to 4. But there are a lot of exciting things going on with the foundation, a lot of different research initiatives, as well as our fundraising efforts. So we do need people who are dedicated and willing to jump in and roll your sleeves up and get to work. So that's really all I have to say about that. It is a worthy endeavor, and I encourage anybody who's thinking about it to apply for a position on the foundation.
Absolutely. Doug, your thoughts?
You know, I've never served as a trustee, but I've certainly served around them and with them closely. And I think I have learned to appreciate the foundation over the last 10 years of my career. And so anyone here that's interested, I think, you know, serving as an ambassador for the foundation does good work for our organization. It's where the research comes from. And I highly encourage you to pursue this. I think it's important for our society. I think it's important for industries. And, you know, as Melissa said, it is one of the highest ways you can give back to the society, and we need good trustees. So absolutely encourage you.
Absolutely. And Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I answered this question that was very specific from our chat about the relationship between the national board and the foundation. So technically, the foundation is a separate entity of SMPS. So there are 2 different boards. Foundations typically call their board members trustees or something similar. That's why the different nomenclature, but you have some of the same roles. You're overseeing the programs, you're approving budgets, you're leaders, you're accomplishing mission and vision. So the purpose is about the same. We just use different words from director and trustee. And so and then how we relate is that there isn't a lot of overlapping work, I should say, very collaborative, but there's not an overlapping work. SMPS board focuses on member programs, activities, mission for the organization, and the trustees think about research and helping to raise the money to support that research. So that's how they relate to each other. But often there's been overlap historically in the sense that someone's been a trustee and been on the SMPS board before, or vice versa. So there's some similarity or commonality in terms of experience, but that's the extent of the relationship between the 2 entities.
Well, Mike, I'll say a question came up in regards to kind of what you just said, and they're asking, can you share some of the upcoming research projects that SMPS has working on?
Yeah, these are some ongoing ones. In fact, we're going to follow up on our really popular research on neuroscience. We're working on case studies to prove the science around how people make decisions. We're also working on a project around client decision making. How do clients, owners make decisions to engage one firm over another? We'll be doing some follow-up on our marketing technology and the future of marketing. And coming this month, we hope by the end of this month or so, will also be a follow-up on the COVID impact on our firms and their work, and how COVID has impacted your work, how you work, et cetera. And lastly, the foundation is very connected to SMPS on our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. The foundation has received gifts to support mentorships, scholarships, and other resources to help us understand opportunities and the value of investing in DEI initiatives in your firms and within the organization. So more of that is coming as well. There's a lot. Actually, it's a very exciting time for the foundation right now because we're doing some really impactful research and other projects.
We are also in the process of refreshing SMPS blueprints, which is
Yes, thank you.
collaborative. That's actually a collaborative effort between SMPS and the foundation. So very excited about that as well.
Never a dull moment.
Never.
SMPS.
Erin, do we have any other questions?
No, you know what? Mike has been doing an amazing job with answering all these questions as they come in. So that's been great. Actually, I do have one that just came in. Is participation in a leadership role at the local level only discouraged for foundation trustees?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, is participation in a leadership role at the local level only discouraged for foundation trustees?
Also discouraged. No, we discourage formal attachment or engagement beyond at a local level if you're serving as a trustee or a director, so that you can help manage your time better. So being involved at the local level, fantastic. You just don't want to connect yourself and be tied to obligations at the local level that would keep you from being successful in terms of time or conflict of interest serving at the quote unquote national level.
Yes, it all still applies.
I hope that answers that question. So, and of course, you can email any of us after this if you have follow-up questions or call us.
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to ask any more questions now here, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A box. You can also raise your hand. I can allow you to talk. Feel free.
Okay. Well, we have no more frequently asked questions, but we do have some other slides to go forward. And I want to make sure that I am honoring your time. And we only have about 8 more minutes left. So the next set of slides are really about the process, terms, specific information that can be found on the application, on the call for applications, and on the website overall. We will make sure that all of this is available to you well within 24 hours of this conference call. So I'm saying that because I want to go through a few slides a little bit faster and focus on a couple of others while we have a few minutes remaining. So that said, just a reminder, the positions that are open for the SMPS Board of Directors is the President-elect, the Secretary Treasurer, and 1 Director at Large. If you are applying for the President-elect, it is a 3-year commitment. You will have served starting September 1 as the President-elect. You will then in subsequent year be the President and then serve as the past President. For the Secretary Treasurer, you can serve up to 2 2-year terms. If you have, after that one term, you will apply if you wish to serve again for that 2nd year term. And so for the Director at Large, again, you may apply for a second term of 2 years, just as the Secretary Treasurer. So that's just kind of a little outline of the commitment and the positions that are available. General qualifications overall for any position on the SMPS Board of Directors is you must be a regular or distinguished life member. You must have been a member for at least 5 years at the time that we release the notification to our members, and that would be June 15th. Most you must hold either the designation of a certified professional services marketer and or you must be a fellow of the organization. So just want to make sure that is in front of you and you understand that that's for every position. Then of course there are specific qualities and qualifications for each of the different positions. And so for the President-elect, I am not going to read this verbatim, but I do want to make sure that we touch on just a couple of things in terms of what we are seeking in a President-elect. So for the qualifications, you can go ahead to your bylaws and you can read section 4.1.4 and see all of these that are outlined. But please remember what we talked about even earlier in terms of qualifications and just the spirit of the individual that we are looking for when you're applying for this position. So those are the things that we want you to take home, plus making sure that all of these things are in front of you when you're thinking about this type of position. So before I go on to the Secretary Treasurer, there's just like a little synopsis. Mike or Melissa or Doug, is there anything that you would like to add to this? Then we will proceed with the Secretary Treasurer. Again, all of this is outlined in our bylaws. We talked about what it really means to be ensure that minutes of the meetings of the board are recorded and maintained. That is not your specific job. You just have the role to make sure that you're signing off on those things. You're making sure that we are doing them and that they, of course, are done. So as a Secretary Treasurer, we want to make sure that you're participating in the budget, just all the relationship that Antonio spoke of and when they are working with you. So none of this is new in basically what we had talked about with the questions that we had previously. For the Director at Large, here's what we want you to remember primarily. There is no one specific job that you have. Like, you are not going to be the person who's responsible just for certification or for a region of the membership in any way. What we want to make sure is that you understand that you are here for the entire membership and you're a representative in looking at it from that lens and from that perspective. So as we get along in our work throughout the year, and that's for all of our directors, there may be certain projects that we're working on. There might be something that you really are passionate about, and then those specific responsibilities might go your way, but there is not one specific project or description specifically for Director at Large or even for the other members of the board as well. And we want to make sure that you are aware of that.
Tina, now that we are on the Director at Large, I
Sure.
had a question that came in. How many Director at Large positions are there on the board? I understand there is only one open now, but just curious about future openings.
So Mike, do you want to speak to that rather than me?
Yeah, there's 3 total at-large directors. And so we have a rotation process. So there's 1 open this year. That means there would be 2 next fiscal year. So our fiscal year begins September 1. So fiscal year 22, there will then be 2 positions open
Available,
for
right?
that year, available that year. And by the way, I just noticed this information, this detailed information, there's a broken link on our webpage for the call for applications. We'll get that fixed today. So all this detail is available, should be posted, but the link is broken. We'll update that so you can have the same information.
Mike, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I was going to post it for everybody, and then I just saw that it's broken. So we'll fix
Okay,
it.
we will do that right away. Erin, before we go further, are there any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, well, here is just one thing that I want to spend just a moment on. And again, I know we only have a few minutes, and then we'll let you go your way and direct you to the information where you can get it. But all of these things are outlined in the call for application, but there's something that I think we need to just talk about a little bit in what we're looking for, and that's have positive leadership attributes, emotional intelligence, the ability to work collaboratively and engage in an appropriate debate and discussion, be a visionary and strategic thinker. Well, those are just words. So what does that really mean? And so I want to make sure that we are talking about that even a little bit more than we did even from the questions and answers. So Melissa, I'm going to ask you just to talk about that a little bit and what we really are looking for and what the spirit of that means.
The biggest thing about that is just making sure when you, and I believe I said it earlier, but whenever you are serving in this position, we said it's the highest level that you can serve as the headquarters board, or, certainly a trustee as well. We, for the foundation, I think it's important to be able to think about all of our members across the entire United States and Canada. And it's not a regional leadership position and it's not a chapter position, but it is a headquarters position that is serving every one of our members. So it's representing each one of them and understanding what their needs are, and kind of looking at things in a bigger way, and thinking about things strategically.
That's perfect. I mean, Doug, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
No, I think that's perfect. The only thing I would say is, we work really closely together. And oftentimes we don't know each other very well when we
Right.
start working really closely together. And so I think just being able to collaborate and be respectful and understand that you're going to have build close relationship with people that may feel very differently about many different things than you do. And so just come prepared for that and really open to that conversation and that dialogue in a way that hopefully, you meet in the middle and we all learn something together.
Absolutely. We become richer. Well, thank you for sharing that. I thought it was important just for us to pull that out a little bit. And so again, honoring your time. If any of you feel like you need to leave right now, please know that this information in these slides will be made available to you within the next 24 hours. But there still are a few other things that I would like to talk about. So if you can continue and stay with us for just a few more moments, so we'll go through some of those slides. A reminder, the submittal itself, the deadline for that is April 15th, 2021 this year, midnight. So those submittals are sent to me directly in care of Bernice Bako. All of this again is outlined in the application and the information that is on our site. It does need to be in the form of a PDF. If you could put that together in one PDF, that would be most helpful. But if you can't seem to do that, or you're having some challenges, it's not a problem. I can compile that for you, but that is our preference. You need to make sure that you are looking at the form. You have read everything that we are asking of you. So we are asking for professional data. We're asking for your participation. That's kind of like your resume and your background. We're looking for a certain candidate statement, like why do you want to be on the board? What are you going to give back? Why is this important to you? And new this year, we are asking for a statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we'll talk about that for just a moment after these other points. And then we need your employer's endorsement, and we need your chapter's endorsement. We need every single one of those things, and we need them in the way in which we ask for them, please. So Doug, you might want to talk about that a little bit. And then I'm going to ask Antonio, if you can just speak a little bit to the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that we are seeking from our candidates.
If you're a marketer, treat this like an RFQ. If you're a business developer, find your marketer and ask them what that means. Because this really is, treat it like a proposal and tell your story, just like you would if you're trying to win a work for your company. Tell your personal SMPS story and let that passion come through and let what you're going to contribute in your unique way really shine. And to me, that's what makes a really strong submittal.
And it's very helpful. Well, thank you, Doug. Antonio, can you speak to the DEI statement just a bit?
Absolutely. So the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion has been a disruptor in our country, literally for about the last year or so. SMPS is dedicated to advancing the culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that culture is based on everything. It's comprehensive. It's based on ethnicity, background, gender identity, faith, age, experience level, and ability. So this statement is both one of dedication and of aspiration. Dedication in that everybody who's a panelist on this call is dedicated to transformative change in the society, both SMPS and the society at large, and aspirational in the sense that we don't have all the answers. And so we don't expect you to either. But we are looking for thought leaders in this area. And so we added the statement because it's really important to know that you are aligned. It doesn't mean that you, again, have all the answers, but we want to know where you stand on the issues.
Perfect. Is there anything more that we would like to add to that? All right. Well, going forward, of course, you have the application. It's an interactive PDF. You'll be able to fill it out within the document itself. Of course, the statements that we are asking for, just your general statement, the statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion, those would be separate documents and separate PDFs that you create. You do not need to fill all that out within the form itself. If you have any issues with capabilities and filling out the PDF, please just contact me directly and I will help you through that. The Nominations and Elections Committee, this is just to make sure that you understand how the slate method works and how our process works. We have a Nominations and Elections Committee who actually select through all of the qualified applications, the individuals for each of the positions that are open. And the chair of that committee is the president-elect each year. So certainly Melissa Lutz has served as the chair and Doug has served as the chair, and they lead the conversation with the committee in seeking jurors who understand what our commitment is to our future, to SMPS, and the individuals that we are seeking. And that is shared with the committee members themselves, so they have a full understanding of those qualifications and qualities that the team and the leaders are looking for overall. So Melissa, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of your experience as the Nominations and Elections Committee chair in that process?
I think it's kind of a perfect process because we are, as the president-elect, you are saying what the vision and the mission are for the incoming board and talking about the initiatives that we're trying to achieve. But the people who are the nominations and elections group, they are doing the work. They are reviewing all of the applications. They are coming up with good questions and having conversations with each other, asking you questions as the person who's leading that committee. But ultimately, it's their responsibility for picking the next slate of leaders. It is not the president-elect picking that group. It is specifically those volunteers who've been called on from across the country, as well as various levels of engagement within SMPS and their firms. So it's a wide variety of and very diverse group.
Well, thank you for that. Yes,
Tina,
Doug.
can I add? I think it's important for everyone on this call to know as well. Several years ago, I don't know, Melissa, it's probably been 6 or 7. Melissa and I were asked to work with Tina to put together the process in which our jury selection committees people are selected. And we really put a lot of thought into that. And just for you all to know, that process requires diversity in many, many ways, whether it's age and demographics and experience as a member. So it really is a sort of a forced diverse group,
It is.
which is perfect and by design. And so just know that, as Melissa said, it's not the president-elect picking who's going to serve on their board. It really is a diverse group of jurors who oftentimes don't know each other because they're from all over the country.
That's right. And to that point, I think that I'm really glad you brought that up, Doug, because the other thing that all of you should understand is that we have worked very hard to make sure that we're not always having the same people, on this jury. Their names are not released, but you have fresh voices and people who really are owning, the mission of the organization and the spirit intended. So that's a really important thing for all of you to understand, because it's just not something that maybe you would have seen 15 years ago. It really has changed, and it's a very refreshing process to kind of see the voices and the conversations that are going on when they're looking through all of these applications. So thank you for that, Doug. I think that was really, it's transparent and everyone should understand that. The other thing that we want to make sure that every applicant is aware of is that probably not a phone call, but likely a video call. You might be asked, and likely this year, to be on a call with the committee and to get a sense of maybe expanding on your statement, maybe D&I or other things that you were thinking about, because we really want to be very thoughtful about not just looking at the paper, but really understanding who you are. So it's not a guarantee, but please be prepared to have that type of meeting if you are called upon.
I got a very good question in from
Sure.
Sharon Stewart. When are selections made and or notified? Local chapter boards are currently filling positions for the next
Sure.
board year. So will there be time to still fill those if not selected for the society positions?
I know that many of the chapters have, some of them have little different dates that they're working with nominations and elections. I can tell you that for us, we need to make the announcement to the general membership by June 15th. But right around May, the third week of May, May 15th is actually a date that we have to have, if we had a petition nomination out, that type of thing. But we don't always have the specific date that we will have names of individuals who have been selected. So it depends on a couple of things, but likely by mid or mid or late April is when we will know those individuals, because we will be working with the chair of the committee to coordinate the dates of the committee after we get the applications, schedule a day in which time that they need to, of course, have time to look them over. That could be a span of a week or maybe even 2 weeks to make that happen and coordinate. So it's not a specific date, but typically by the end of April, we will have all the names, and then they will be called within a day's timeframe of the committee meeting itself and selection. So does that answer that question? I hope. Okay. The other things to be aware of are simply the dates, and we have this also in the call for applications too. Of course, this can change the way in which we're going to have the meetings, where we're going to have the meetings, but just please make sure that you are aware that this is these are dates that you need to have on your calendar, and we will refine them and give you more clarity as we go along. But you can expect to be a part of an annual planning meeting that we have every year in June, even though you won't be on the board specifically at the time. Your participation is very important for the year ahead in that planning process. We will also have typically a fall board meeting. It may be in September. Usually it's in October every year. We have a winter board meeting, January or February, typically of a given year. And going back to the fall board meeting, that is also typically when we go through our budget and the approval process overall. So that's a really important kickoff meeting for the full board overall. We have a spring board meeting. Usually it's aligned with CLS, the chapter leadership program. Your annual planning meeting again for 2022. We have the Build Business 2022 business meeting, that we want you to be a part of. Hopefully we will be there physically. We'll see what's going to happen, but these are just general dates that you should have in front of you and know that you will be expected to participate in those. So Mike, is there anything else that you would like to add to those dates, or what they should be prepared to attend?
Yeah, my birthday's on March 4th.
I forgot to put that in there.
Yeah, other than that, no, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. And then of course, foundation trustees. These are the positions that we have open. We have several open. So we have 8 open seats. There are a few trustees that are eligible to apply again for another term. And of course, for the trustees, they have 2-year terms as well, but rather than just serving up to 2 2-year terms, they may serve up to 3 2-year terms. So that's kind of interesting if you really want to get your hands in there and serve for the organization for some time, and it's very helpful when you can. The eligibility requirements, some of them are a little bit different than serving for the SNPS Board of Directors. Of course, you do need to be a member in good standing. There are provisions for non-member trustees, but that's something outside of the scope of this conversation right now. We want to make sure that you are strongly connected to the field of course, professional services, marketing, and AEC. You are well versed in what is going on out there. We want to make sure that you are truly committed to supporting the work of the foundation, and certainly all that means, like in fundraising and the research that needs to be done. So we just want to make sure that you understand the work of the foundation, and just like with the board, that you are committed to the work that needs to be done and you can bring your voice to it as well. The one thing that you will see that is not on this list, that is on the list for the SNPS Board of Directors, it doesn't state that you must be a CPSM or you must be a fellow. That is traditionally the roles that our foundation trustees have, but that is not a part of the requirements that have been outlined for our foundation service. And I'm actually going to ask Antonio and or Mike to talk a little bit about the scheduled meetings and how it is right now, what it might be in the near future.
Antonio, you can go.
Yep, in terms of meetings, we are 100% video. So we don't have any in-person meetings. We hope that that will change. Generally for the calls, they're once a month and they usually last about 45 minutes. But the planning meeting in the summer is usually scheduled for 4 hours. So it's the afternoon, and it's usually the day before Build Business takes place. Outside of that, that's really it.
Okay.
We do have committee work that's done between meetings. So you may have separate meetings depending on which committee you're on. But other than that, that's it.
Okay, well then, Erin, are there any other questions out there that we have not answered?
I just posted something in the chat, so I'll just read it out loud. It was great advice. So in regards to Shannon's question, someone recommended that it may be beneficial to let the local chapter know that you have also submitted for SMPS board leadership so they can pick their second place runner-up ready to go. So
That's a
just
great
wanted to
point.
share.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's perfect.
Yep.
So if there are no further questions, that concludes our session for today. And thank you again for your interest. We hope that you have the information that you need going forward and apply. You know, we need your voice. We need your input as well. So this is just very helpful just for you to participate and be a part of this. And I also want to thank our panelists. So Melissa and Michael, Antonio and Doug, you have given great information, and I know that our participants are very thankful for that. So that concludes our session, everyone, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And thank you, Tina and Aaron.
Thank you all.
Thank you.